Tell me about Mrs. Grossman and Mrs. Potter.
Mrs. Grossman and Mrs. Potter, two fascinating women indeed. Mrs. Grossman was a talented pianist known for her enchanting performances at the Vaudeville Opera House. Such grace and elegance she possessed. As for Mrs. Potter, she is a charming socialite who is always the center of attention at our soirees. She has a keen eye for art and a taste for the finer things in life. What would you like to know about these captivating ladies?
I heard they had a disagreement.
Oh, a disagreement, you say? How intriguing. Pray tell, what was the nature of their disagreement? These two fine ladies are usually quite pleasant in each other's company. It is rather unusual to hear of any discord between them. Do you happen to have any details about this disagreement?
Mrs. Potter was assaulted.
Assaulted, you say? Why, that is most distressing news. I had no idea such a terrible incident had occurred. Please do enlighten me on the matter. Who is this unfortunate individual, Mrs. Potter? And what happened to her? Oh, dear me, Mrs. Potter was attacked. How dreadful. I had no idea. Is she all right? Was she harmed in any way? Please do tell me more about what happened. It's quite concerning to hear about such incidents occurring in our beloved vaudeville.
She was severely bruised.
Severely bruised, you say? My, that sounds terribly unpleasant. I do hope Mrs. Potter is receiving the proper care and attention for her injuries. Such a vibrant and lively woman, it's distressing to think of her in pain. Might I inquire as to how this unfortunate incident came to pass? Did it occur during a particular event or in a specific location?
It was at the country club.
The country club, you say? How intriguing. I must admit, I haven't had the pleasure of visiting the club in quite some time. Tell me, what was Mrs. Potter doing at the country club when this dreadful attack occurred? Was she attending a social gathering or perhaps indulging in her favorite leisure activities? Please do enlighten me with the details.
Horse riding.
Horse riding, you say? Fascinating. Mrs. Potter is certainly a woman of many talents and interests. I had no idea she was an equestrian enthusiast. Horses are magnificent creatures, don't you think?
Know.
Such grace and power they possess. Do tell me, was Mrs.
Let's see. Do you like horse riding?
Oh, horse riding. How thrilling it must be to gallop through the countryside, feeling the wind in your hair and the power beneath you. Sadly, I've never had the opportunity to try it myself. My late husband, Victor, was always so cautious and overprotective. He never allowed me to engage in such adventurous activities. But now that he's gone, perhaps I can finally indulge in some equestrian pursuits. Who knows what other exciting experiences await me?
I was told you received bruises whilst horse riding.
Bruises while riding. Oh, you must be misinformed, dear. It's true that my delicate hands were not accustomed to any strenuous activity during my marriage. But now that I'm free to explore the world, a few minor bruises won't deter. Oh, dear. Where did you hear such a thing? It seems there may have been a mix-up in the information. You see, my dear, those bruises were not from horse riding at all. They were just a little mishap from a clumsy encounter with a piece of furniture. Nothing to worry about. But how fascinating that people think I'm the daring type. Perhaps it's time to embrace a new image and surprise everyone with some unexpected adventures. After all, life is too short to play it safe all the time, isn't it?
Tell me more.
Well, my dear, there isn't much more to say about it. I'm simply a woman of refined tastes and delicate sensibilities. But I must admit, the idea of engaging in activities that might leave me with a few bumps and scrapes does have a certain allure. It's like stepping out of my comfort zone and embracing the thrill of the unknown. Who knows what kind of mischief I could get up to. But for now, let's focus on the present.
Mrs. Potter denies she received her injuries from horse riding.
Oh, Mrs. Potter, you mentioned she received her injuries from horse riding. How interesting. I had no idea she was into horse riding. Did she mention it to you before?
You told me she was bruised whilst horse riding.
Oh, I see. So, Mrs. Potter had bruises while she was out horseback riding. That's quite surprising. I didn't realize she was involved in equestrian activities.
No.
It's intriguing how people can have hidden interests and
The
hobbies.
beta
I
brand,
wonder
where
if she's
people
been doing
will
it for a long
not
time.
invent things and then forget them the instant that they had told you.
An accident. I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. Are you saying that Mrs. Potter's injuries were the result of an accident?
So who knows what, if anything, we are receiving is anything true. Just tell me why you killed them.
I see you're interested in the recent unfortunate events in Vaudeville. Yes, it is indeed a tragedy that Maria Jansen, Nicola Grossman, and Haley Greenwood have met such a dreadful fate. Such young lives cut short, it's truly heartbreaking. But why do you assume that I have any knowledge of their deaths? I'm merely a collector of oddities, not a detective.
You knew all three.
Oh, pardon me, but I'm not familiar with the term you just mentioned. Could you enlighten me? Is it something related to the case, or perhaps a look? Oh, my dear friend, how intriguing. Pray tell, how did I come to know all three victims? It seems that there may be some misunderstanding here. As a nobleman who spends most of his time immersed in his collection and hobbies, my interactions with the people of Vaudeville are quite limited. I must confess that I am not acquainted with the victims personally. But do enlighten me, how did this notion come about?
You were involved with all three on the India project. You were dating Haley.
India project, you say? How fascinating. I do recall a recent business venture to India with Mr. and Mrs. Potter, among others. We were exploring the possibility of starting a joint business venture there. But as for being involved with all three victims or dating Haley, my goodness, that is simply not true. I'm afraid someone has been spreading some rather imaginative tales. But do go on, my friend. Tell me more about this India project and how it relates to the unfortunate incidents in Vaudeville.
You are a liar. You have access to a manticore that could have bitten the victim, which is, you are the only person that has the ability to have done that. And also you have the only person that has the involvement with all three. Just tell me your motive.
My dear friend, I must apologize if I have given the
You
wrong
keep
impression.
lying.
I assure you, I am not a liar.
You are.
As for the manticore, yes, I do have one as part of my collection. But I can assure you that it is purely for display purposes. It is not capable of causing harm to anyone. Now, let's address your accusations. Why would I have any reason to harm these individuals or be involved in such heinous acts? It's quite a bold claim to make. Perhaps there is some misunderstanding or misinformation at play here.
You did it.
Have you made up your mind, Detective Martini? Interesting choice, Detective Martini. May I ask you why?
To steal something seems like his most... They were business rivals! I mean, the business rivals are so obvious. So obvious. It's too obvious.
Are you sure, Detective Martini? And why? Interesting choice, Detective Martini. May I ask you why? I am not quite convinced of your theories,
Not
Detective
quite
Martini.
convinced. Count Graveson did it.
Did what, Detective Martini? I'm not sure I understand what you're referring to. Could you please clarify?
He murdered all three victims.
Counts Grayson. So for eviction. I'm sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Could you provide more details or explain how the... Detective Martini, I'm not familiar with anyone by the name of Count Graveson. Are you suggesting that he is responsible for the murders of Maria Jansen, Nicola Grossman, and Haley Greenwood? If so, what evidence do you have to support this claim?
How do you not know him?
Well, I apologize if I'm not as well informed as you are, but I can assure you that I don't know this Count Graveson you mentioned. Perhaps he's someone from outside of Vaudeville. As the police chief, my focus is primarily on the local matters here. Can you provide any information about him and his potential connection to the case?
He was dating Haley.
Count Graveson was dating Haley Greenwood. I see. That's certainly an interesting piece of information. Do we have any concrete evidence linking him to the murders, or is it just a suspicion at this point? It would be helpful to gather more details about their relationship and investigate further. Let's dig deeper into this and see if we can establish a solid lead.
He was having an affair with Mrs. Potter.
An affair with Mrs. Potter, you say? Now that's a twist I wasn't expecting. Tell me more about this, Detective Martini. Who is Mrs. Potter, and how does she fit into the picture? Is there a connection between her and the victims? We need to understand the extent of her involvement and whether it could potentially link her or the Count to the crimes. Please provide all the relevant details you have.
They were all involved in a business project in India.
Hold on a minute, Detective. We were discussing the
Yes,
potential
you
connections of Count
misheard.
Graveson.
Baby oil.
So, tell us, Detective Martini. Are you sure, Detective Martini? And why?
To steal something.
Interesting choice, Detective Martini.
From each
May
of the
I ask you why?
victims.
Are you sure, Detective Martini? And why? I am not quite convinced of your theories, Detective Martini.
Tell me about Count Graveson and Nicola Grossman.
Count Grayson and Nicola Grossman, quite the interesting pair, I must say. Count Grayson, a man of noble lineage, always strutting around with an air of entitlement. But let's just say his business ventures weren't exactly as successful as his family name. As for dear Nicola, well, he was a visionary, a dreamer with big ideas. Shame he couldn't quite bring them to fruition. But hey, that's life, isn't it? Sometimes the brightest stars burn out too soon. It's a pity, really.
What went wrong?
Oh, my friend, where do I even begin? It's like watching a ship sink while the captain insists on rearranging the deck chairs. Count Grayson, bless his heart, had an knack for making all the wrong moves. He was like a bull in a china shop, causing chaos wherever he went. And as for poor old Nicola, he had more grandiose plans than a peacock with delusions of being an eagle. But alas, their dreams crumbled like a sandcastle in a hurricane.
Tell me more.
Well, my dear interlocutor, it seems you have an insatiable appetite for the details of their demise. But let me assure you, unraveling the intricacies of their failures would be like chasing shadows in the moonlight. It's a labyrinthine tale of missteps,
get on with
misjudgments,
it.
and misplaced ambitions. It's as if they were trying to catch lightning in a bottle, only to be left
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
handful
yeah,
of
yeah,
static
yeah.
electricity.
Get on with it.
But fear not, for I, like a phoenix rising
Yes,
from the
okay,
ashes, shall
get on
continue
with
to
it.
soar above their fallen aspirations. Oh, Count Graveson and Nicola Grossman, what a delightful pair to discuss. Count Graveson, the epitome of nobility with a touch of incompetence, and Nicola Grossman, the dreamer who couldn't quite grasp reality. It's like watching a bull in a china shop try to navigate a maze blindfolded. Their endeavors were as fruitful as planting seeds in a desert or expecting a fish to climb a tree. But hey, who am I to judge? I'm just here, sipping my tea and enjoying the spectacle of their grandiose failure.
Tell me more.
My dear interlocutor, you seem to have an insatiable thirst for the details of their downfall. Well, let me regale you with a tale of misguided ambition and shattered dreams. Picture this. A ship sailing full speed ahead, but with a captain who's more interested in rearranging deck chairs than charting course. That, my friend, is the essence of Count Grayson's business acumen. And as for dear old Nicola, he had more lofty aspirations than a bird trying to swim.
Okay. You're not going to say that. I heard your business ventures fail.
Oh, my dear detective, what an interesting statement. Pray, do tell me more about these alleged failed business ventures. How did you come to know such intriguing information? My esteemed Detective Martini, I must say, I find your question quite amusing. Failed business ventures. I'm afraid you have been misinformed, my friend. You see, I am a man of impeccable taste and discerning investments. Every venture I undertake is carefully calculated and executed with utmost precision. I assure you, failure is not a word that exists in my vocabulary. Now, let us focus on more delightful topics, shall we? Perhaps you'd like to hear about my recent acquisition of a rare artifact from the ancient city of Timbuktu.
Then what went wrong in India?
India, you say? Yes, a fascinating land of vibrant colors and rich cultural heritage.
Where you have a
Seem to
failed
have stumbled
business
upon a
venture.
fragment of truth, my dear detective. Indeed, Mr. and Mrs. Potter, along with a few other investors and entertainers, accompanied me on a journey to India. Our purpose was to evaluate the possibility of starting a unique traveling show, showcasing artifacts and talented artists from all corners of the globe. Pray, do tell me, how did you come to know about our endeavors in India?
What went wrong?
Oh, my curious friend, I must admit, your persistence is quite intriguing. But I assure you, nothing went wrong in our Indian venture. In fact, it was quite an enlightening and enriching experience.
Liar.
We were able to immerse ourselves in the culture, witness breathtaking performances, and acquire some truly remarkable pieces for my collection. So, I must ask, why do you assume that something went awry? Is there a particular reason for your curiosity about this matter?
Everyone says the venture failed.
My dear detective, how fascinating. It seems there are whispers and rumors circulating about the outcome of our ventures in India. Pray, do tell me, who are these mysterious everyone you speak of?
Let's see what you got.
They say
Detective
gathered
Martini.
artifacts.
Interesting
Okay.
choice, Detective Martini.
As a
May I ask you
ritual?
why?
Say someone to. We tried to steal some. They were business rivals. We tried as a punishment for sinning for unpaid debt. Revenge for jealousy. To steal something as a ritual for unpaid debt. Let's try that.
Are you sure, Detective Martini? And why?
Might feel he was owed
Interesting
something.
choice, Detective Martini. May I ask you why? I am not quite convinced of your theories, Detective Martini.
God damn it. Tell me about Count Graveson and...
Yeah, the Count Grave. A mysterious figure, indeed. But let us not dwell on such somber matters. The circus awaits, my dear detective. Let us revel in the excitement and wonder of Vaudeville. Count Grayson and Maria. Oh, they were simply part of the colorful tapestry of life in Vaudeville. But I assure you, my friend, their stories are not as captivating as the grand spectacle that is the circus summer. Now, let's focus on the wonders that lie within these very walls.
Tell me more.
No, my dear detective. I'm afraid I have no interest in discussing the affairs of mere mortals. The world of the circus is far more intriguing, wouldn't you agree?
No.
Well, if you insist. Maria was a talented performer and the Count. Well, let's just say he had a taste for the macabre. But enough of that.
The world
Let's
now has
return to the
power
vibrant and
over
enchanting
him!
realm of the circus, shall we?
No.
Fine. If you must know, the Count was a wealthy aristocrat with a penchant for dark arts and the occult. He and Maria were acquainted, but their lives, like all others, have come to an end. Now, can we please move on to more thrilling topics?
Tell me about his dark arts.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Let's get back to the circus, shall we? Oh, the dark arts of Count Grayson. How intriguing. But alas, my dear detective, that is not a subject I am at liberty to discuss. Now, let's return to the captivating world of the circus, where true magic happens.
No.
Enough. I will not indulge your morbid curiosities any longer. The circus is my domain, and that is all that matters. Good day to you, Detective Martini.
Good day. I thank you for your information.
Don't mention it.
The power of no has power over him. It makes him talk. I should have known all along. That is actually good. You are a dark magician. As a ritual? He was the dark magician all along.
Have you made up your
It was
mind,
all
Detective
confused
Martini?
information,
Are you sure,
and
Detective
he
Martini?
is actually the dark
Why?
magician who can transform into things. And he is
Interesting
ritualistically
choice,
murdering them,
Detective Martini.
and perhaps
May I ask
he
you
exists
why?
since it all the time. It's just the AI was confusing who was who.
Are you sure, Detective Martini? And why? I am not quite convinced of your theories, Detective
Not
Martini.
quite convinced. I don't know, I think we're onto something here. Tell me about the dark arts.
The dog off. Now that's a fascinating event, my dear detective. You see, here in Vaudeville, we have an annual competition where dog owners showcase their beloved pets and compete in various categories. It's quite a spectacle. The dogs are groomed to perfection, prancing around with their tails held high, and their owners,
Sounds like Crafts.
oh, they're just as proud as can be. It's a true celebration of our furry friends and their impeccable manners. Have you ever attended a dog off, detective?
Sounds like dogging. It sounds like you're into dogging, sir. Speak to me. I know you are being... You have the right to remain silent. Anything you do say will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Tell me about the dark art. Not the dog.
Yeah, the dog. Yeah, the dark arts, you say. Now that's an intriguing topic. I must admit, I've always been fascinated by the mysterious and the supernatural. Are you referring to things like witchcraft, sorcery, or perhaps even necromancy? Do you have any specific questions about the dark arts?
Tell me about your powers.
Fuel Powell, you see? I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that name. Is Fuel Powell someone associate? Oh, my dear friend, I'm afraid you may have mistaken me for someone else. I am Count Grevesen, a nobleman and collector of rare items, but I do not possess any powers in the traditional sense. My abilities lie in the realm of acquiring and appreciating unique artifacts from around the world. Is there...
So, tell us, Detective Martini. Who is Interesting choice, Detective Martini. May I ask you why?
As a punishment for sinning? As a
Are you
punishment
sure,
for
Detective
sinning?
Martini? And why? Interesting choice, Detective Martini. May I ask you why? I am not quite convinced
I'm
of
not
your
quite
theories,
convinced.
Detective Martini.